I am a church boy, born and raised in the house of God. I gave my heart to the Lord when I was 4 years old, just before I started what we call kindergarten in America. Before you start the first grade, they'll start you in what we sometimes call preschool or kindergarten. So before I turned 5, just a few months before I was 5 years old, I gave my heart to the Lord. And my mother led me to the Lord. She was ironing clothes, and here's this little boy, and I'm asking my mother questions about what it really means to have Jesus in your heart. And I asked her, did I have to shout, as we called it back in those days, because I grew up with a Baptist and Pentecostal background, and when people would rejoice exuberantly, as you just saw the dancers, I come from that background where we would do that in church with that style of music. And I asked her, did I have to do that to have Jesus in my heart? And she said, no, all you do is ask him to come in. So as a 4-year-old little boy, I just got down on my knees right there at the sofa and just asked Jesus to come into my heart. It was just that simple. And for those of you that are in this room that don't know Jesus, it's just that simple. You just ask him. You open the door. The Bible says he stands at the door at your heart and knocks. And you just let him in. If a 4-year-old boy can understand that, then what's your excuse at 14 and 24? Just let him in. And so I grew up in just what you call just a church home, but I did not realize why everything was so serious in my house. All I ever remember was everyone was so serious, and we had such an atmosphere where life was taken, I don't know any other word to say except life was taken so seriously. Well, as I grew older, the story came out that while my mother was pregnant with me, my older brother, who was 2 years old at the time, she lost he was the youngest boy at the time, but she lost her 2-year-old baby. She was pregnant with me when her 2-year-old baby died. And the way he died, they were sitting at breakfast and eating grapefruit. And as he swallowed grapefruit, he got choked. And she tried desperately to revive him. Back in those days, they didn't know anything about the Heimlich maneuver and all that kind of thing. And they called a preacher who lived upstairs. In fact, I'm born and raised in the ghetto of St. Louis. And they were living in the home of a preacher. And they called him, and he tried to revive the baby, and he couldn't. And by the time my father got home, he was already gone. The ambulance came, but he would have been my older brother, was dead on arrival. And so when I came into the world, I came into the world of a family who was in grief. I came into the world of a family who had faced death, who faced it suddenly, who faced it unexpectedly. And so life was very serious in our house. I grew up with my parents taking us as little children to meetings like this. We didn't always understand it, but we had to be there. Some of you are like that. You come from that background where here we've had a week of Youth Alive. Well, in my background, this was all the time. You were in church all the time. Some of you nodding your head and say, yep, you know about that. We were in church regularly like this. I still had my struggles as a little kid, giving my heart to the Lord at 4 years old. In fact, sometimes people think that all of us kids who grew up in church, how many church kids I got? Been in church all your life, yeah. Some people think that we don't know what's happening. Ain't that right? That's probably our biggest complaint. People think that we don't realize what's going on in the world, and that somehow we are, we're insulated and we're ignorant and we're naive about what's really going on. And so one of my major problems was that I had a very violent temper, an extremely violent temper. Typical family, all my brothers and sisters, how we, especially in our black families, we start talking about each other, your big head, your big lips, your skinny body, all your big feet. You can't nobody talk about you at all, except, how your brothers and sisters can talk about you. But when we would get into those sessions, I could feel this anger rising up in me. And I would say to them, y'all better leave me alone. Y'all better leave me alone, because I could feel this anger coming up, and I would explode, and I would just turn over tables and throw things. Just a tantrum. So I understand sometimes when I've heard the stories of young men who lost their temper and killed somebody, because other than that temper tantrum, I was the meekest, mildest, quietest little boy in the world. But that same little boy could turn tables over when he got angry. And I could feel it coming, and I couldn't stop it. And I would warn them, please, I was like the Incredible Hulk. Don't make me angry. You don't want to make me angry. And so I remember by the time I was 11 years old, this anger was building up and getting to the point where I would have dreams of killing my brothers and sisters. Some of you know what I'm talking about. I didn't have to plot or think about it. I wasn't the type of child who would, start holding a grudge, and we called it scheming and plotting to get them. But I started having dreams of ways to kill them, especially my little sister. We had a rule in my house: the boys couldn't hit the girls. I grew up with both a mom and a dad in our home, and my father had some strict rules. I'm very grateful for them to this day about how to treat your sister and how to treat your mother. But I had a sister who took advantage of that rule. So one of the things she liked to do, I was 11, she was 9, she would like to come and punch me, hit me and say, and you can't hit me back because Daddy said you can't hit girls. And so one day she did that. And all I did, we were out in the backyard, and we were playing, and she did that. She hit me and said, you can't hit me back. All I did was look down at the ground, and there was a brick. Now, she saw me look down at the ground, and when she saw me look at that brick, she started running. But I had instantly gone to that point of rage, and I reached something that I had never experienced before. I reached murder. Murder was in my heart. I wasn't thinking, I'm just going to hurt you this time. It was, I'm going to kill you. And I reached down to get that brick, and I had a very accurate arm. One of my goals in life was to become a professional baseball player. I wanted to be a pitcher. And I used to practice. I used to take a tennis ball, and I marked off about 60 feet, because that's the distance from the pitcher's mound to pitch. And I put up just 2 little lines. I drew them on the steps, and I used to just practice getting that ball right in between those 2 lines. So I was accurate. I'll tell you how accurate I was. One time a little boy gave me a dare. I bet you can't hit me. And I was holding a little rock. You're going to think I'm always throwing bricks and rocks when I get through. So he gave me a dare that I couldn't hit him. And I picked up a little rock, and I threw it, and I watched his eyes cross as I hit him dead in his forehead. His eyes and I hit him right there. So I was accurate. So I picked up the brick to get my sister, and she was running. And I hurled it with all of my strength. And it's like it's slow motion right now. But I saw her running, and the brick was right behind her head. And just as she got in the door, she dove into the back door, and the brick shattered up against the doorpost. If I had hit her, she would have been dead. And at that moment, I still wasn't finished. I missed. So now I must do it by hand. So I went after her. And I was a fast kid. I was very fast. So I took off after my sister, and I mean, I was right behind her. And she was screaming, yelling, you know, "Mama! Mama!" And we were racing up the steps. And my mother, saved, sanctified, baptized, filled with the Holy Ghost, mother said to me, "What do you think you're doing?" And I froze in my steps. I just stopped. And she gave those words that all of us hate to hear. When your father gets home, at that point, it was like, "Mom, just beat me, please. Just don't tell Daddy, don't tell Daddy." Well, when my father got home, something unexpected happened to me. My father came in, and I was a child who my father really got to the point he was afraid to beat me. We got beatings. You know, in America, they got all kinds of laws they're trying to get in place about corporal punishment, but, you know, I'm thankful for my beatings because it kept me out of jail. I wouldn't be standing here today if my father hadn't given me, we call it corporal punishment. You know. But he sat down and he began to talk to me. And he told me he understood how I felt. He listened to me as to why I got so angry. I told him that my sister, her name is Pam, I said, "Pam keeps hitting me and saying I can't hit her back." And he listened to me. And for the first time, I'm one of those kids, my father used to beat me and I would not cry. I was that child. Some of you parents who are like that, who, if you got a child like that, you're looking, there's hope. I was one of those. He would hit me and I'd just look at him. He'd hit me harder and I'd look at him. I was one of those kids, you know, some kids when they really get mad, their whole face. I did that one. And I just looked at him. He hit me again. And I remember the look on his face one time, a look of fright and fear came on his face because he realized there's something wrong with this boy. But on this occasion, he sat down and he talked to me. And then when he pulled out the belt, I thought I was going to just get a talk and not get a whipping. But when he pulled out the belt to give me the whipping, I started crying. Why? Because Daddy had taken the time to listen to me and find out why I was doing what I was doing. Why did I share all of that story? Because for many of us, we're afraid to come to Daddy because we think he's going to beat us and not listen to why we are like we are. I'm talking about winning by design. What is it?